Look, I'm going to be straight with you. My name is Jake Morrison and I haul cargo for a living. Toilet paper to Delta 7. Frozen dinners to the mining colonies. Sometimes, if I'm really lucky, live chickens to agricultural stations. It's not glamorous, but it pays for fuel and keeps me in instant coffee, which is basically all I need to survive. So when my piece of garbage freighter decided to have a complete electrical meltdown in the middle of the Andromeda sector, I wasn't exactly thrilled. The emergency landing beacon pointed me towards some backwater planet that didn't even have a proper name. Just a designation, AR-773. Catchy, right? What I didn't know was that AR-773 was currently hosting the biggest scientific circus in galactic history. The planet itself was dead. I'm talking lifeless rock with an atmosphere that could charitably be described as hostile. But sitting right in the middle of a massive crater was this thing. This gate. 20 meters tall, covered in symbols that probably meant something profound to someone who wasn't me, and absolutely refusing to do whatever it was supposed to do. I landed my ship about a kilometer away, mostly because the valley was packed with research vessels, military cruisers, and what looked like a mobile laboratory the size of a small moon. There were aliens everywhere. Krellians, Zentari, Vopniks, species I couldn't even pronounce. All of them standing around staring at a big fancy doorway that apparently didn't work. Commander Vexlar found me about 10 minutes after I touched down. He was Krellian, which meant he looked like someone had taken a lizard, stretched it to 7 feet tall, given it armor plating, and removed its sense of humor during the process. His scales were a militant shade of green, and his eyes had that special gleam that said he'd been dealing with paperwork for too long. "Human," he said like it was a diagnosis. "You cannot be here. This is a restricted Galactic Council site." I held up my datapad showing the emergency beacon. "Your planet called me. I'm just trying to not die in space, Commander." He made a noise that might have been a sigh if Krellians had lungs that worked like ours. "Fine. You will remain in the designated visitor area until your vessel is repaired. Do not touch anything. Do not approach the gate. Do not even look at the gate too intensely." "What's so special about the gate?" Vexlar's eyes narrowed. "It is an artifact of the first ones, ancient, powerful, completely inert for the last 3,000 years despite our best efforts. So it's broken." "It is not broken. It is simply not responding to proper activation protocols." "Right, broken." I'm pretty sure he wanted to arrest me just for that, but he settled for pointing me toward a cluster of prefab shelters where other visitors were apparently being detained. Sorry, housed. Definitely housed, not detained. Here's what I knew about humanity's place in the galaxy at that point. We were the new kids. Showed up about 70 years ago when we figured out faster-than-light travel, immediately started asking uncomfortable questions, and generally made ourselves into a minor nuisance. The Galactic Council tolerated us because we were good at fixing things and surprisingly hard to kill, but nobody took us seriously. We were the cosmic equivalent of that neighbor who does their own plumbing and somehow doesn't flood their house. As I walked toward my assigned guest quarters, I got my first good look at the gate. It was beautiful, I'll admit that. The symbols seemed to shift in the light, and there was something about the proportions that made your brain itch in a good way. Like looking at a really well-designed piece of machinery. Too bad it was just an expensive paperweight. The next morning, I woke up to what sounded like a small war happening outside. Turned out it was just the daily gate activation attempt, which apparently involved enough energy to power a small star, and roughly the same subtlety. I grabbed my terrible instant coffee and wandered over to watch the show. Professor Quilnex was running the operation. He was Zentari, which meant he had 4 arms, crystalline skin that refracted light in annoying ways, and an ego that could be seen from orbit. He was currently directing a team of technicians while simultaneously lecturing everyone within earshot about his 17 doctoral degrees. "Today," he announced in a voice that suggested he expected applause, "we will attempt harmonic resonance at the quantum level. My calculations indicate a 97% probability of success." I leaned over to a nearby Vopnik's engineer. "What was yesterday's probability?" 96%, she said without looking at me. Let me guess. Didn't work. Nothing works. We have tried everything. Energy manipulation, telepathic interface, temporal phasing, singing to it nicely. You sang to it. The Melodians insisted. They are very convincing when they harmonize. Quillnex activated his equipment, and the gate did absolutely nothing. I mean nothing. Didn't even have the courtesy to spark or hum or give any indication it had noticed several million credits worth of technology being aimed at it. Fascinating, Quillnex said, which I was learning was scientist speak, for we failed, but I'm not admitting it. The readings suggest we need to adjust the frequency by 0.003%. Or, I said loudly enough to be heard, maybe it's just broken. Every alien in the vicinity turned to stare at me. Quillnex's crystalline face somehow managed to look offended. The gate is not broken, human. It is merely locked. For 3,000 years. Security features of the first ones were notoriously complex. Or it's broken. Commander Vexlar appeared at my elbow like a lizard-shaped bad penny. Mr. Morrison, perhaps you should return to your quarters. Can't. Coffee's out there. I gestured with my cup toward the refreshment station that had been set up for researchers. Over the next several hours, I watched as species after species took their shot at the gate. The Cynthians tried telepathy, which resulted in 3 of them getting nosebleeds, or whatever their nose equivalent was. The Luminari, who were essentially sentient light, tried phasing through it and just bounced off like someone had installed cosmic plexiglass. My personal favorite was the Crystalline Collective, who tried to harmonize with the gate's molecular structure and ended up shattering 2 of their members. They pulled themselves back together, but it looked painful. This is ridiculous, I muttered. The Vopnik's engineer from earlier, whose name I'd learned was Trill, nodded. The Council has spent 400 million credits on this project. At this point, it is about pride. What's supposed to be inside? The archive of the first ones. All their knowledge, technology, the secrets of how they became the most advanced civilization in galactic history. And then they died out? Or ascended or left. Records are unclear. But yes, probably died out, which should really tell us something about how useful their knowledge actually was. I liked Trill. She had a healthy appreciation for irony. What happens if they can't open it? She made a gesture that might have been a shrug. Commander Vexlar has orders to destroy the gate if the Council cannot access it within the month. Pride issue. If we cannot have it, no one can. That seems wasteful. Welcome to galactic politics. By late afternoon, Quillnex had attempted 6 more activation sequences, each with more complicated names than the last. The gate remained aggressively inert. I was starting to feel bad for it. Imagine being the most important archaeological discovery in modern history, and your main job is disappointing people. Commander Vexlar was getting increasingly stressed. I could tell because his scales were shifting to a darker green, and he'd started snapping at subordinates over minor infractions like breathing too loudly. Perhaps, Quillnex said during the debriefing, we need to expand our genetic testing. The gate may respond to a specific species signature. We have tested representatives from 47 different species, Vexlar said, including 3 who are now extinct and had to be cloned specifically for this purpose. Then we need 48. Everyone looked around at each other. Then several sets of eyes landed on me. Oh no, I said, absolutely not. You are the only human present, Quillnex said, for completeness of data. I'm trying to fix my ship and leave. It will take 5 minutes. That's what my ex-girlfriend said, and look how that turned out. But they were insistent, and Commander Vexlar made it clear that my repair permit might get delayed if I didn't cooperate, so I let them lead me up to the gate. Quillnex attached some sensors to my forehead, told me to touch the gate, and waited with the eager anticipation of someone who really needed a win. I pressed my hand against the smooth surface. Nothing happened. Fascinating, Quillnex said. I'm starting to hate that word, I replied. They let me go after that, and I went back to working on my ship's electrical system, which was honestly less frustrating than watching the galaxy's best minds fail repeatedly at opening a door. Here's the thing about repairing a freighter with parts you've scrounged from 6 different planets. Nothing is standardized. Everything is held together with hope and spite, and the diagnostic systems lie to you as a hobby. 3 days into my forced stay on AR-773, I was pretty sure my ship was mocking me personally. The power coupling I needed was specific. Really specific. The kind of part that nobody manufactures anymore because it's from a freighter model that was discontinued before I was born. But I'd seen similar equipment in the research camp, and desperate times call for desperate measures and light theft. I waited until around midnight when the alien circadian rhythms meant most of the camp was either sleeping or in that meditative state that passed for sleep among species without eyelids. The security was surprisingly lax. I guess when you're surrounded by the galaxy's finest scientists and military personnel, you don't expect some human cargo hauler to be sneaking around. I found what I was looking for in a storage container near the main research building. A beautiful, compatible power coupling, just sitting there like it was waiting for me. I grabbed it and was halfway back to my ship when I heard the clicks. Security drones. 4 of them hovering in that menacing way that drones have perfected. Unauthorized personnel detected, they announced in unison, because apparently even robots are dramatic. I ran. Look, I'm not proud of running from security drones, but I'm also not proud of a lot of things, and this wasn't going to make the top 10. The drones chased me through the camp, their spotlights turning night into day and definitely waking up everyone I'd been trying to avoid. I dodged between prefab buildings, jumped over equipment crates, and generally made a spectacle of myself. In my defense, those drones were fast, and I was motivated by the desire to not get arrested on a planet that didn't even have a proper prison, just a detention cube that looked really uncomfortable. The chase led me straight toward the crater, toward the gate. I tried to turn, but my boots hit a patch of loose gravel and physics decided to remind me who was in charge. I went down hard, sliding across the ground like I was stealing home plate, and slammed face first into the base of the gate. Son of a... I started but never finished the curse because the gate decided that was the perfect moment to stop being a disappointment. Light exploded from the symbols. Not the gentle, mystical glow you see in movies. I'm talking about a blast of illumination so bright it burned after images into my retinas. The entire crater lit up like someone had installed a new sun, and every alien in the camp immediately started screaming in their various languages. I scrambled backward, still clutching my stolen power coupling, staring at the gate as it blazed with energy. The symbols were moving, rotating, rearranging themselves into patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the light died. The gate went dark again, silent, inert. But the damage was done. Within 30 seconds, I was surrounded by scientists, soldiers, and one very angry Commander Vexlar, who looked like he'd been woken from a pleasant dream about filling out forms in triplicate. "What did you do?" Quillnex demanded, his forearms waving like he was conducting an orchestra of panic. "I fell," I said. "That's it, I fell." Humans do not simply fall and activate ancient technology. You'd be surprised what we activate by falling. It's kind of our thing. They hauled me to my feet and dragged me to the research building, where I spent the next 4 hours being scanned, sampled, and interrogated. They took blood, tissue samples, brainwave readings, and asked me approximately 700 questions about what I'd been thinking when I touched the gate. "I was thinking that I was about to break my nose," I said for the 40th time. "But what else?" Quillnex pressed. "What emotions were you experiencing?" "Mostly annoyance at gravity. They made me touch the gate again. Nothing happened. They made me touch it while thinking about different things. Nothing. They even tried making me recreate the exact angle and velocity of my fall, which resulted in me getting a bruised shoulder, and the gate remaining thoroughly unimpressed. By dawn, everyone was exhausted, confused, and looking at me like I was either the key to everything or the universe's worst practical joke. Commander Vexlar pulled me aside. "Mr. Morrison, I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. I understand that I accidentally touched something I wasn't supposed to touch. You are the first being in 3,000 years to elicit any response from that gate. Do you comprehend what this means? That I have really bad luck?" His scales darkened another shade. It means that you are now the single most valuable asset to the Galactic Council's research initiative. You are not leaving this planet. That sounds like detention. It is protective custody. So detention with better branding. He didn't dignify that with a response, just assigned 3 guards to follow me everywhere. Which was fine, except now I couldn't even steal a power coupling in peace. The gate sat in its crater, dark and silent, keeping whatever secrets it had decided to share for exactly 3 seconds before changing its mind, and I was stuck trying to figure out why a 70,000-year-old piece of alien technology had decided that my face was worth acknowledging. By the end of the week, the research camp had tripled in size. Every major species in the Galactic Council had sent representatives, and they all wanted to study the human who'd accidentally done what their best scientists couldn't. I was poked, prodded, scanned, and interviewed so many times I started giving contradictory answers just to keep myself entertained. The theories about what made me special were getting increasingly absurd. Perhaps it is the human skeletal density, suggested a Vopnik's physicist. The calcium composition may resonate with the gate's activation frequency. Maybe it's emotional volatility, offered a Cynthian psychologist. Humans are notoriously unstable. Hey, I objected. You have wars over sports teams. That's fair. My personal favorite theory came from a Zentari biochemist who insisted that the caffeine in my bloodstream had created a unique neural signature. They actually tried to get me to drink more coffee before touching the gate again, which I was happy to do. But the gate remained disappointingly inactive. Commander Vexlar was getting desperate. The council had extended his deadline, but not by much, and he was starting to look like someone who'd aged 10 years in 10 days. His scales had lost their shine, and he'd developed a nervous habit of checking his data pad every 30 seconds. There must be a logical explanation, Quillnex kept saying, as if saying it enough times would make it true. I was sitting in my assigned quarters, drinking my 1700th cup of terrible coffee when someone knocked. A human someone, which was novel. Mr. Morrison, I'm Dr. Mira Kess, xenoarchaeologist. Can I come in? I opened the door to find a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that suggested she'd seen too many research grants get denied. She had that look academics get when they've been fighting bureaucracy longer than they've been fighting ignorance. You're human, I said brilliantly. Last time I checked. I've been on this site for 8 months studying the gate. Mind if I sit? I gestured to the only chair that wasn't covered in spare parts from my ship. She sat down and pulled out a data pad covered in notes. I have a theory, she said. But nobody wants to hear it because it doesn't involve quantum physics or genetic markers or any of the fancy things they can measure. I'm all ears. What were you feeling when you touched the gate? Annoyed, we've established this. But why were you annoyed, specifically? I thought about it. Because I was being chased for trying to fix my ship. Because I've been stuck on this planet for a week. Because everyone treats humans like we're the cosmic equivalent of toddlers who can't be trusted with sharp objects. Because I just want to do my job and go home, and instead I'm being detained and studied like some kind of exhibit. Dr. Kess smiled. Frustration, adversity, the feeling of being underestimated and having to push through it anyway. Okay. What do you know about human history, Mr. Morrison? We've had a rough time of it. That's an understatement. We survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and our own tendency toward self-destruction. We got to space through sheer stubborn refusal to accept that maybe we should stay home. Every time the universe said no, we said, watch me. I'm not seeing how this connects to an ancient gate. The first ones left artifacts all over the galaxy, gates, temples, archives, and every single one has tests, puzzles, challenges. They weren't just advanced, they were selective. They wanted to see which species would survive their trials. I was starting to follow her logic. So you think the gate is testing for something specific? Not something. Someone. A species that succeeds despite impossible odds. That perseveres through adversity as a default state. She leaned forward. Humans don't just survive problems, Mr. Morrison. We're annoyed by them. Offended. We take obstacles personally. So your theory is that the gate activated because I was professionally irritated. The gate activated because you embodied the core human trait. We're too stubborn to quit even when we absolutely should. It was the dumbest theory I'd heard all week, which automatically made it my favorite, because at least it didn't involve my bone density. How do we test this? That's the problem. You can't manufacture genuine frustration. The council is going to want you to recreate the moment, but forcing it won't work. She was right. Over the next 2 days, they tried everything. They made me run obstacle courses. They presented me with unsolvable puzzles. They even tried insulting my ship, which did genuinely annoy me, but apparently not in the right way because the gate stayed dark. Quillnex was ready to start testing other humans, but Dr. Kess's theory had gained enough traction that the council approved bringing in a small team. 3 other humans arrived, 2 scientists and an engineer who took one look at my ship and immediately started explaining everything I'd done wrong. We all touched the gate at various times. Nothing happened. This is illogical, Quillnex insisted during one particularly tense debriefing. If the hypothesis is correct, any human experiencing adversity should activate the gate. Maybe it needs to be authentic, Dr. Kess said, not performed for an audience. Commander Vexlar's datapad beeped with another message from the council. His scales went almost black. We have 72 hours before the destruction order is executed. I need results. I looked at the gate through the window of the research building. It sat there, ancient and inscrutable, probably laughing at all of us. And I realized something. I wasn't frustrated anymore. I was fascinated. The mystery had stopped being an inconvenience and started being interesting, which meant I'd lost the exact emotional state that had activated the gate in the first place. I was going to have to get genuinely annoyed at this thing again, which, given my track record, probably wouldn't take long. The council's solution to the human question was exactly the kind of bureaucratic nightmare I'd come to expect. They set up a series of authentic adversity scenarios designed to trigger genuine human frustration. It was, without exaggeration, the dumbest thing I'd ever participated in, and I once tried to fix a plasma drive with duct tape. Subject Morrison will now attempt to assemble furniture from unclear instructions, announced one of the test coordinators, a Krellian scientist who clearly thought this was brilliant. I looked at the pile of parts in front of me. This is an alien chair. I don't even know what sitting means to your species. Precisely. Authentic frustration. It was frustrating, but in that manufactured way that felt like a bad reality show. I assembled the chair, or something chair-adjacent, and they walked me to the gate. I touched it while thinking about how stupid this whole exercise was. Nothing. They tried other scenarios, made me fill out forms with contradictory requirements, had me explain human customs to aliens who deliberately misunderstood, even made me taste Zentari cuisine, which I'm pretty sure violated the Convention on Cruel and Unusual Punishment. The gate remained dark. By day 2 of testing, I was actually frustrated, but it was frustration at the testing itself, which apparently wasn't the right kind of frustration because the gate could tell the difference, or it was just messing with me. Hard to say with ancient technology. I'd had enough. I'm done, I told Commander Vexlar during the evening debriefing. This isn't working. I'm going to fix my ship and leave. You cannot leave. You are essential to this research. I'm essential to nothing. The gate went off once by accident, and you've spent 2 weeks trying to make lightning strike twice. It's not happening. The Council has invested considerable resources. The Council has wasted considerable resources studying me like I'm some kind of anomaly instead of just a guy who wants to go home. His scales shifted. You are confined to this facility, Mr. Morrison. Yeah, well, I'm leaving anyway. I walked out of the debriefing room, fully aware that I was probably about to get arrested. The 3 guards assigned to me moved to intercept, and I did what any reasonable person would do in that situation. I ran. Again. Because apparently that's just my solution to problems now. This time I knew the camp layout better, and I used every shortcut I'd mapped out during my detention. Sorry, protective custody. I vaulted over equipment crates, slid under research equipment, and generally made a nuisance of myself while security tried to catch up. Mr. Morrison, stand down, someone shouted over a loudspeaker. I just want to fix my ship, I shouted back. I was angry, genuinely angry. Not about the chase, but about everything. About being treated like a lab specimen. About having my freedom taken away because I'd accidentally touched something. About being stuck on a dead planet while bureaucrats debated my value as a research subject. About being human in a galaxy that saw us as curiosities instead of equals. I'd spent my whole life being underestimated. Too small, too weak, too new to the galactic stage. We were the species that showed up late to the party and had to fight for every scrap of respect. And I was tired of it. The chase led me, inevitably, back toward the crater. Because the universe has a sense of irony and really enjoys hammering it home, I skidded to a stop at the edge, breathing hard with security drones closing in from 3 directions. The gate loomed in front of me, dark and silent. "You know what?" I said to the gate, too angry to care that I was talking to an inanimate object. "I'm sick of this. I'm sick of being studied and analyzed and treated like some kind of cosmic accident. I'm sick of gates and tests and councils and all of it. Humans didn't claw our way out of caves and across space just to be someone's interesting research project." I walked up to the gate, not caring about protocol or sensors or the dozen scientists who were probably recording this. We survive. That's what we do. We survive ice ages and plagues and wars and our own stupidity. We survive being underestimated and dismissed and told we don't belong. We survive being the smallest and the newest and the most likely to fail. And you know what the galaxy's response is? Let's study them. Let's figure out what makes them special. Like we're some kind of puzzle to solve instead of people who are just trying to do our jobs and live our lives. I slammed my hand against the gate. So either open up and show us what's inside or stay closed and prove that all this ancient wisdom everyone is so excited about is just another locked door we'll eventually figure out how to kick down. Because that's what we do. We kick down doors. The gate exploded with light. But this time it didn't stop. The symbols blazed, rotating and rearranging themselves. The air hummed with energy that made my teeth ache, and slowly, impossibly, the solid surface of the gate began to shimmer. It became translucent, then transparent, then it wasn't there at all, replaced by a swirling vortex of colors I didn't have names for. The gate was open. Security finally caught up to me, but they'd stopped trying to arrest me. Everyone was staring at the portal, at the pathway that had appeared after 3,000 years of silence. Dr. Kess ran up, her datapad forgotten, her eyes wide. "You did it. You actually did it." I yelled at it. "You embodied authentic human frustration. The gate was looking for a species that perseveres despite adversity, and you just gave it 3,000 years of human history in a 2-minute rant." Commander Vexlar approached cautiously, his scales pale with shock. "The portal is stable, but there is an energy field. We cannot pass through." One of his soldiers tried to step through and bounced off like they'd hit a wall. "Let me try," I said. I walked up to the swirling portal and reached out. My hand passed through easily, like touching warm water. "Of course," Quillnex said from somewhere behind me. "The gate is not merely open, it is selective. It opened for humans." "You're kidding." Dr. Kess tried the portal. Walked right through and back out again. The other humans tested it. Same result. Every alien who tried bounced off the energy field. The gate had opened, but it had only opened for us. For humanity. I looked back at Commander Vexlar, whose expression suggested he was having a very bad day that was about to get much worse when he reported this to the council. "So," I said, "who wants to see what's inside?" Here's what the archive of the first ones turned out to be. A museum of failure. I'm not being sarcastic. Well, I am, but also I'm being literal. The vast chamber beyond the gate was filled with exhibits, artifacts, and holographic displays, all cataloging the spectacular failures of species that had come before us. Dr. Kess, myself, and 3 other humans walked through corridors lined with achievements that had ultimately meant nothing. Empires that had conquered galaxies before collapsing from internal rot. Technologies that had solved every problem except the ones that mattered. Species that had achieved perfection and promptly died of boredom. "This is the Great Archive," one of the human scientists said. "It's a graveyard." "No," Dr. Kess said, reading one of the displays. It's a warning. And a test. The central chamber held a massive holographic display that activated as we approached. A figure appeared, humanoid enough to be recognizable but clearly not human. It spoke in a language that the translation system struggled with before settling on something approximating standard galactic. Greetings, it said. If you are seeing this message, you have passed the first trial. The gate of perseverance has deemed your species worthy of consideration. Worthy of consideration, I repeated. That's pretty backhanded, Ancient Ones. The hologram continued as if I hadn't spoken, which, to be fair, it probably couldn't hear me because it had been recorded before my ancestors figured out agriculture. We were the first ones, the eldest, the most advanced. We created wonders and solved the mysteries of existence. We achieved everything a species could achieve. A pause. The holographic figure seemed almost sad. And in doing so, we forgot what made us strong. We forgot the struggle, the adversity, the necessity of overcoming impossible odds. We became soft, comfortable. When the challenges finally came, we had no response except surprise that the universe still had the audacity to challenge us. More displays lit up around the chamber, showing species after species that had come to the archive before us. The Krellians, the Zentari, the Vopniks, dozens of others, all tested by the gate, all failed. The gate of perseverance is not merely a lock, the hologram explained. It is a filter, a measure of a species' fundamental nature. Many species are intelligent, many are powerful, many achieve great things, but few maintain the core trait that ensures survival, the ability to face adversity and persevere not despite frustration, but because of it. I looked at Dr. Kess. So we're qualified because we're professionally annoyed? Essentially. That's the dumbest qualification I've ever heard. The hologram gestured to the chamber around us. Here you will find our knowledge, our technology, our history, all of it preserved for a species that demonstrates the capacity to use it wisely. Not perfectly, not without failure, but with the understanding that adversity is not an obstacle to overcome, but a constant companion to be acknowledged. More displays activated, revealing technical schematics, medical databases, historical records. Centuries of accumulated knowledge from a civilization that had reached heights we couldn't imagine, and then vanished because they'd forgotten how to fail. Your species, the hologram said, and I swear there was approval in its ancient voice, arrived at this gate already frustrated, already facing challenges, already accustomed to being underestimated and dismissed. This is your strength, guard it jealously. The message ended. We spent 6 hours in the archive, barely scratching the surface of what was available. Dr. Kess was crying. The other scientists were frantically taking notes. I was mostly trying to wrap my head around the fact that humanity's greatest achievement was apparently being stubborn and irritable. When we emerged from the gate, the entire research camp was waiting. Commander Vexlar approached immediately. What did you find? The archive, Dr. Kess said. Everything the first ones knew. Medical technology, engineering, physics, centuries of knowledge. Can other species access it? She hesitated. The message was clear. The archive opened for humans, for species that demonstrate perseverance through adversity as a core trait. And other species? Might qualify eventually, if they demonstrate the necessary characteristics. Which was diplomatic speak for probably not. Quillnex pushed forward, his crystalline face reflecting the light from the still active portal. This is unacceptable. The knowledge of the first ones cannot belong to a single species, especially not humans. And yet, I said, here we are. The political fallout was immediate and complicated. The council held emergency sessions. Various species argued that the test was flawed, that human activation was coincidental, that surely their own qualifying attempts had been close enough to count. But the gate didn't care about politics. It had made its choice. Commander Vexlar pulled me aside on my last day on AR-773. My ship was finally repaired, mostly because Dr. Kess had authorized access to anything I needed from the research supplies. Turned out being the key to ancient knowledge gave you certain privileges. I do not understand, Vexlar said. My species is disciplined, logical. We have survived for millennia through careful planning and strategic thinking. Why would the first ones choose humans over us? I thought about it. Because you survive by avoiding problems. We survive by being annoyed that problems exist in the first place. Your species sees adversity as something to overcome and move past. We see it as something to be personally offended by and then punch until it apologizes. That seems inefficient. It absolutely is. But apparently it's what the first ones were looking for. His scales shifted to a lighter green, almost accepting. Perhaps there is wisdom in your inefficiency. Careful, Commander. That almost sounded like respect. Do not push your luck, human. I left AR-773 3 days later. My cargo hold empty, but my datapad loaded with the first contact protocols for accessing the archive. The Galactic Council had begrudgingly accepted that humans would be the gatekeepers, though they'd negotiated visitation rights and knowledge-sharing agreements that would take decades to finalize. Dr. Kess stayed behind to continue her research. She'd been appointed as the official human liaison to the Council, which meant she got to spend her days explaining to aliens why humanity's defining characteristic was being stubborn and grumpy about obstacles. As for me, I went back to hauling cargo. Toilet paper to Delta 7. Frozen dinners to mining colonies. The occasional live chicken shipment that made my ship smell like a barn for weeks. But now whenever I landed at a station, other species looked at me differently. Not with respect, exactly. More like they were trying to figure out what made humans special, and whether they should be worried or impressed that our main qualification for accessing ancient wisdom was being perpetually irritated. The funny thing is, nothing really changed for humanity. We were still the new kids in the galaxy, still underestimated, still having to fight for every scrap of recognition. The archive gave us knowledge, sure, but it didn't magically make us respected or feared or whatever it is species think they want. What it did do was confirm something we'd always suspected, that maybe, just maybe, our tendency to look at impossible situations and say, "Watch me," wasn't a bug in our design. It was a feature. The first ones had achieved everything and lost everything because they forgot how to struggle. They'd wanted to find a species that would remember, a species that would face their advanced knowledge and think, "Okay, great, now what's the catch?" instead of assuming the hard part was over. They wanted a species that would stay hungry, stay annoyed, stay ready to kick down doors even when they finally had the keys. So yeah, humanity's greatest achievement was being professionally frustrated. We'd survived to the space age by being too stubborn to quit, and apparently that was exactly what the universe had been waiting for. I still think it's the dumbest qualification in galactic history, but I'll take it. 3 months after leaving AR-773, I got a message from Dr. Kess. The Council had formally recognized humanity's stewardship of the archive, which meant we were now responsible for deciding who else might eventually gain access. Other species were lobbying hard, trying to prove they had the necessary perseverance. The Krellians had started a military training program specifically designed to build frustration tolerance. The Zentari were studying human history to understand our adversity response patterns. Even the Melodians who'd tried singing to the gate were attempting to compose symphonies about struggle and hardship. It was hilarious watching the galaxy's most advanced civilizations try to learn how to be annoyed properly. "We're running seminars," Dr. Kess wrote, "teaching other species about human approaches to problem solving. Yesterday I had to explain to a Vopnik's delegation why humans sometimes fix complex machinery by hitting it and cursing. They took 17 pages of notes. I laughed reading that. Leave it to humans to turn spite into a teaching curriculum. As I guided my freighter toward another forgettable station with another forgettable cargo load, I thought about the hologram in the archive, about its warning that comfort was more dangerous than any external threat, about how the first ones had achieved everything and then forgot why achievement mattered in the first place. We weren't in danger of that anytime soon. Humanity was still too busy being frustrated by everything to get comfortable. We had ancient knowledge now, sure, but we also had broken ships and bureaucratic nightmares and a galaxy that still saw us as the weird neighbors who fixed their own plumbing. And honestly, that was fine. Because the day humanity stops being annoyed at obstacles is the day we stop being human. The day we accept that things are good enough is the day we forget what made us special in the first place. So we'll keep hauling cargo and fixing broken ships and cursing at technology that should work better. We'll keep looking at impossible problems and getting personally offended that they exist. We'll keep being too stubborn to quit even when we absolutely should. We'll keep being the species that the ancient, wise, all-knowing first ones looked at and said, yes, those irritating little apes who refuse to accept defeat, they're the ones who should inherit our legacy. And every time some other species asks what makes humans qualified to guard the archive of the first ones, I'll tell them the truth. We peaked by being professionally annoyed, and we're not apologizing for it.